Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. If you have joined us from the Flutterwave network, you probably already have an idea of what we do. But we're a payments technology company that we make payment solutions for businesses, for individuals all around Africa. Um, and we have a huge network of small, medium businesses that obviously have been affected by the pandemic. And we've been trying to figure out ways that we can get information on surviving the pandemic and kind of thriving after it to our network of small, medium businesses. And so we have gotten together a bunch of experts in different fields, and one of them is obviously Mo Odele. She is going to be talking to us about the legal challenges that small medium businesses face. We're going to go into her session, and then we'll do a quick run through of what is available on Flutterwave as well in terms of selling online and being able to still get visibility online. And then we will have a Q&A session. But if you have questions, please feel free to just use the Q&A section in the webinar, and we will address all your questions when we get to the Q&A section. Okay, over to you, Mo.
Oh, hi. Am I still muted? Oh, okay. Hi. My name is Mo, and for the most part, I'm a lawyer. So I run a law firm called Legal, but I also run a platform called Scale My Hustle, which is basically an education platform for startups and SMEs. Anyways, one of the things I wanted to do today was look at the legal challenges. And the reason for this is because, so many people have been talking about all the different things you're supposed to do to survive COVID-19 as a business, right? Nobody really knows what to do to actually survive the pandemic in itself. And we're just trying to figure it out as we go. But there's one aspect that people don't really talk about, which is really the legal aspect. And what I'm trying to do with this particular presentation is sort of like break it down. So it's a lot more understandable and a lot more relatable, if I would say. I've had this conversation, as you can imagine, with clients, with partners, and so many other people just trying to figure out, because for the first time, a lot of businesses are actually now confronted. So when I say businesses, I mean like SMEs, so growing businesses are now confronted for the first time with actual legal challenges, right? Because I mean, as an SME, one of the things that happens is when you start, you're not exactly thinking through issues like legal, right? These are like backburner issues. But what the pandemic has done is that it has brought it to the forefront, and people are now actually having to deal with different challenges, now kind of like go through them. Now, some of them are quantitative and that as well, and some of them are issues that you would actually want to take in. So in terms of Yoani, should I just go right into the presentation itself?
Yes, please.
Okay, awesome. So I'm gonna start with the first thing I really want everybody on here to take away, which is insurance. Insurance is not something that people really talk about. For the most, one of those, again, backburner issues that people tend to leave for the last minute. So it's one of those things where we're like, oh yeah, I've heard of insurance, blah, blah. I don't really know how. Now, the thing is, there's so many issues that people are facing on what you call your business operates in, right? So there's so many issues right now that entrepreneurs and growing businesses are facing, which could have been covered by insurance. So I'm talking about things like payroll, right? Did you know that you can actually insure your payroll? What exactly does that mean? If you are unable, so if you get an insurance product that covers your payroll, if you are unable to pay salaries, the insurance company would cover it up to a certain amount, depending on what your insurance coverage is. Now, the thing about this is, these are, again, like I said, issues that people don't really think about in the first instance, so expecting a pandemic. But when you think about it, having something like payroll insurance not only covers you in terms of when there's a pandemic. So think about it, anything could happen, right? Business could just be slow at a particular point. Something can hit your industry, like maybe regulatory challenges and stuff. For people who say operate in Nigeria and in the logistics in like the ride share or yeah, so motorcycle share. I was trying to figure out what I should call them. So basically there was a ban on motorcycles in a while in Lagos, right? Or, you know, and there had to be some adjusted policy around that. Now, a couple of startups that were operating in that space had to pivot to logistics and all kind of things. Now, during that period, right, where you are trying to navigate those kind of issues, you probably would have situations where your revenues are just not as consistent as they used to be, right? Your cash flow is just not consistent as they used to be. So those are the kind of things those are the kind of places where you need buffers, like your payroll insurance. Now, covering inventory. For people who deal with heavy inventory, if you don't have insurance, I don't even know what else to say. Because at this point, if you're dealing with inventory, so you're thinking about there are different stages of risk, right? So there's the risk of when the inventory itself is being transported. And then there's the risk of where to add to your own shop, and then there's also the risk of when it's being transported to your clients, so the last mile. So when you think about it, so for people who are in inventory heavy businesses, not so many people I would guess are, but for people who are, you have to really think about insurance. And again, this is something that a couple of my clients have begun to face just in recent times, right? Because not only, you know, storage of their inventory, also in terms of like delays with certain deliveries and stuff like that. These are things that are insurable. These are, because when you think about it, depending on the industry that you are working in, right, you need to think through, you know, what exactly does the value chain look like? Because some industries, say in the healthcare space, for instance, cannot afford certain delays, right? So you need to think through all those things. Again, I just wanted to start with this because this is one issue that has been able to differentiate between the businesses I have seen kind of like really thrive during this period and the ones who are really, really struggling in terms of, you know, so a lot of people hadn't taken insurance seriously, and then, you know, we're hit with this pandemic and everybody is like, you know, running helter-skelter. So basically what I want you to do is, as a business owner, kind of like listening to this, think through the different verticals in your business that you can actually insure against future risk, right? So nobody is hoping for another pandemic, but just definitely against future risk. So now I'll move to the next issue, which is probably the biggest one, right? So people always talk about contracts all the time. Now, let me just move this here. Okay. So the first thing you want to do is, depending on the kind of businesses that you run, the first thing you want to do is you need to look through your contracts. You need to go back on every kind of contracts you've signed. So I'm talking supplier contracts, I'm talking I'm talking contractor, well, consulting contracts. So contracts that you have signed with consultants. I'm talking about employee contracts as well. So you need to go through all your contracts and kind of like review your obligations one by one. Now, this is the point where I'll say get a lawyer, of course, but there are certain things that will jump out at you and you're like, okay, at this point in time, we can't exactly fulfill this particular obligation. Now, I'm talking in general terms because I believe that whoever is watching this now or probably watching the recording later, you know, people operate in different verticals. So we want to kind of like, I'm just talking about it in general terms, right? So again, you would have to apply depending on your business. So really look through your contracts, kind of like look through the obligations that you have or the obligations that other people have to you. In fact, look through contracts like your lease agreement for your office or for your shop or for your store, wherever it is. Those are all contracts. And then the next step is renegotiate, right? Like, so this pandemic has brought the opportunity, I would say, for you to renegotiate certain terms. And you're not renegotiating certain terms because, you know, you want to be, you want to be sneaky about it or anything like that. It's just because this is what is happening around the world. People are renegotiating small contracts and large contracts alike. So you don't have to feel too bad about, or you don't have to even feel bad about not being able to fulfill certain obligations and having to renegotiate. So please make sure that you renegotiate obligations that you cannot fulfill. It's a lot better than ghosting, right? You don't want to create that situation where you have, because the pandemic is going to be over, hopefully, and once it's over, you don't want to have to create a situation where you have meshed up different relationships in your value chain, right? So you also want to be able to make sure that all those relationships are kept. And one way to do that is for you to come to whoever you've signed contracts with and say, we're going right, and find out and say, what can we do to renegotiate the terms of our contract. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is force majeure. People hear about this all the time, and then people ask me, and they're like, oh, what exactly does this mean? Now, it's very simple. So this is basically a clause in a contract that excuses a party from, I have it all here, but basically it's a clause that excuses a party from not performing its contractual obligations because it becomes impossible or impractical due to an event like COVID-19 or something that the parties could not have anticipated or controlled. So no matter how much you try to, cover for everything in your contract, there's just some things that you just didn't expect would happen, right? Like I don't think anybody predicted this pandemic. So one of the things you also want to think about is going forward, all your contracts, at least if there's nothing you take away from this webinar, remember the fact that all your contracts should have the force majeure clause, which just says that if something happens and we cannot fulfill our obligation under this contract due to things that we couldn't have anticipated or we couldn't have controlled, then we will be released from liability. So those are very, very important issues that you need to consider. So, so again, look through, when you're reviewing your obligations again, you look through them and say, okay, is this going to be affected by force majeure? What I mean by that is we have, in the last 2 months, spent a lot of time, at least a lot of time in my law firm, really just reviewing contracts and, oh, is this covered by force majeure? Is it not? It's even a fun exercise. It's actually, well, it's a very interesting exercise to just sit down and just kind of like start figuring out the events that would fall under this or not. Again, I would say that these are not exactly things you need to do by yourself, but these are things that you need to understand. So at least if a lawyer is doing it for you, you kind of like understand what they're doing and why they're doing stuff, and you can ask really specific and relevant questions. Now, the next thing I was going to talk about is employee compensation. Now, this is very important because I've been seeing a lot of people kind of like make different adjustments, right? So you have an employee which, say you're paying this person $100 a month or something like that, or, a week, whatever. And you have an employment agreement with them, and because of COVID-19, you're like, oh yeah, we can't pay you $100 anymore. We're going to pay you $50, just like that. And then you have their pay, and you pay them just $50, right, at the end of the month. Well, the thing is, right after the pandemic, those employees can actually come and sue you for breach of contract, because the contract of employment you have with you is that they should be paid $100. So even if they are, and you kind of like get that money, right, because they agree to it, they can still sue you, because the contracts typically contracts exclude any other thing agreed outside the contracts. What I mean by that is there's a particular clause in certain contracts that says that any other thing that we conclude verbally, or any other way that is outside this contract, right? We don't include it into this contract. It's not relevant. So even if you can make the arguments, even if they agreed, right? So maybe you had a meeting and they agreed over the phone, or there was a Zoom call, there was a Zoom recording, whatever it is. But the thing is, that particular contract cannot be varied by oral agreements, right? So because it's a written contract. So what you need to do, it's legal to, it's not illegal. And I want to break it down here. What is legal and what is not? So basically, it's legal for you to say, you want to decrease employee pay. No court is going to hold you, liable for decreasing employee pay. What is the problem though is how you do it, right? Because if you don't do it properly, then it constitutes a breach of contract, which is what we're talking about here. So you need to ensure that you cross your T's and dot your I's. How do you do that? The first thing is, then it should be in written form. What I mean by that is, if they already have an employment agreement with you, then you need to go back and adjust that agreement and say, for the next 6 months, or for the next 1 year, or for the next 2 months, we're no longer going to pay you $100. We're going to pay you $50. So yeah. And if at any point I'm saying something that you don't understand, please do let me know. I mean, the good thing, it's a very small session, at least live, so you can ask your questions, and I'm happy to go back and touch on anything that you don't understand, or you think you want to get more light on. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is follows. So people have, again, another thing is, there's another option. So say, for instance, you as a business owner do not want to lay off staff, or you can't lay off staff at this point, right? And you're like, oh, I still need these people and all of that. One of the things you need to do is ensure that, of course, you're communicating to your employees. Another thing though is, you can actually suspend people from work without pay for a finite period of time, right? You can't just say, oh, yeah, suspended till whenever. So if you're going to follow people, it has to be for a finite period of time, like a specific period of time. So for 3 months, you're still going to be on our list of employees, right? But you're not going to get paid. And you might wonder, why would anybody want to do that? Well, there's situations where somebody still wants to be a part of the company, but they know that the company, they want to still be a part of the company, and they don't want to sever ties with the company. So they want the opportunity to be able to go out there, and look for other options, but still have the option to come back to the company. And that's what happens here. So basically, if your employees are going on that, if you decide that this is the option that you want to go with your employees, one of the things you need to consider is the intellectual property of your company that the employee has. What I mean by that is, during the period that they have worked for you or worked with you, they have created products, created content, created things for the company, because they created it on company time. You want to ensure that you have something called an intellectual property. People have this as part of the employment agreement, but some people don't. So basically, what the intellectual property is, it's an IP assignment agreement. It says though is that when you leave our employment, once you leave our company, then you leave this intellectual property with the company, right? You don't take it away. The problem is, if you do not have an intellectual property assignment agreement, what would happen is that the employee who worked on whatever they worked on has the right to whatever they worked on. So that's just basically, they can take it away. So I'll give you an example. If you hire a couple of engineers to build a product for you, and you do not have this agreement where they assign the intellectual property in that platform to you, the engineers actually own the intellectual property of that platform, regardless of the fact that you pay them to do it. So this is also a very tricky point that people always forget, or probably do not even know. So this is also very important. So if you are going to suspend workers from pay, make sure they are assigning their intellectual property to the company. Then, of course, four laws allow employers to cut labor costs without cutting employees lose totally. But you need to think about during that period in a lot of countries, different countries have different rules and regulations. I'm not going to assume that everybody that is going to watch this is from the same country. But one of the things that you need to understand is look at the various regulations in your particular country and find out what exactly the law requires of you. In some countries, for instance, if you're going to follow employees, you need to give them benefits, you need to give them healthcare insurance and different things like that. So it really depends on your countries and the rules. So you want to kind of like ask your lawyer those kind of things. So like I said, you're not exactly expected to do all of this yourself, but at least it's a good way for you to understand what is going on. So another thing is I want to talk about, so when we talk about, now I want to talk about risk. One of the things that is happening right now is because of the pandemic, right? A lot of businesses are going online, and they're going online for the first time, right? So there are a lot of risk in digital businesses, and I'll tell you, and these are risks that we probably would not see on a day-to-day, right? So they don't occur. So I'll tell you something that happened recently. So, I was talking about, in the last slide, I was just talking about how when you suspend people from work, right, you have to make them sign, an agreement to assign the intellectual property of all the things they worked on while they were in the company to the company. Now, something happened recently with a client of mine. So they had asked somebody to sign an agreement, but it was a non-disclosure agreement. And what happened was the person signed because they met online, Instagram. So, oh, can you help me do this work? And I'll pay you XYZ number of, dollars, whatever. And then, they agreed, and that was it. You know how people on Instagram don't use their real names, or at least they don't use their government names, like the names that they were given at birth, right? And that's fine. But one of the things you have to know is that if somebody is signing, because somebody can come and say, my name is John Crow, and it sounds like a real name, but if you don't verify that that's their identity, then you are stuck with a document that you cannot enforce, because you cannot enforce a document against nobody. Now, there are different other issues around fraud and things like that. I don't even want to go into that. But one of the things we really immediately found out was that my client has signed an NDA with this person who was a consultant. And the idea was that I don't want you to disclose any part of my business because this is commercially sensitive information. But what happened though was that the person who was signing did not sign as their legal name. Now, we don't know for sure if they were trying to defraud or if it was done with, if they were just being unscrupulous. I'm not sure what it was. But one of the things you want to understand is when you now are doing business in the digital space, it's not like somebody is coming to your shop or is coming to your store physically where you can see them and just transact. So a lot of things are happening online. So you need to think about like identity verification before you make payments to anybody and everything like that. There's nothing wrong with asking them for proof of identity, the government ID, driver's license. You can even ask for two. Honestly, because at this point, people are running the risk of doing business with people that they cannot identify. I do understand that because I run 2 virtual businesses, and I do understand that a lot of businesses have been going digital for a very long time without problems. But it doesn't still stop the fact that right now, there are a lot more people coming into the digital space, right? And with that comes its own problems, right? So you have scrupulous people, unscrupulous people, and they just come in there and you can't really tell for sure. So you want to make sure that you have a system of identifying people's identity before you do business with them, either as suppliers or anything like that. So another thing you also need to think about is, depending on your business, how are you thinking about privacy and data security? This is something that, as a service provider and as a law firm that deals with a lot of clients' information, we kind of like had to start thinking about it a lot more critically. So the more you sort of like digitally transform your business, the more susceptible you become to data and privacy breaches. So you want to ensure that you are kind of like thinking through this as well. Then the next thing is protection of intellectual property. And I kind of like touched on that earlier. But now when we're doing things in the digital space, you're sending people emails, you're sending people, you know, WhatsApp messages, you're sending people, like everything is done digitally now. Your idea is like you're texting people and everything like that, or, you know, things in your business that are commercially sensitive and everything like that. So one of the hacks that I would say is, underneath, if you're the founder or the CEO or anything like that, make sure you have that privacy statement underneath your email signature that says anything, you know, that I'm communicating with you is the intellectual property of this company and it's confidential. Just have it there permanently, right? It's not going to cost you anything. You just go to your email signature and just put it on there. Because now you have to think about the fact that, again, a lot more things are being transacted online, and a lot more sensitive data is being exchanged. So you want to think through if you are sharing commercially sensitive information, or, you know, there's something that is the intellectual property of the company. Whoever is involved is aware of the fact that they either have to assign that intellectual property to the company, or at least they sign something that's, or there's an indicator that this is the intellectual property of the company, right? And like I said, you know, having it in your email signature kind of like just helps you a great deal. Now, another thing you need to think about is dispute resolution. So now a lot of people are entering into different contracts with different people, and then I see things like, oh, if there's any disagreements, we'll go to court, we'll do arbitration, we'll do this. But what you have to understand, though, is that we don't know how long the pandemic is going to last, or how long before courts become operational, or you can even do any of this stuff. So one of the things you need to think about is, okay, right now I'm doing business with someone. What if we have a disagreement? How do we settle that disagreement? One of the things I always advise, especially SMEs, is don't tie yourself up with court or arbitration or all those things. Make sure you stagger the dispute resolution process, like by saying, if we have a dispute resolution, both parties will come together and negotiate. So like the CEOs of both companies will come together and negotiate. If we cannot reach a conclusion, then we'll have a mediation. The mediation is going to be by a board member of each company, something like that, right? And then if we cannot reach mediation, then we can go to court or something like that. Why I'm saying this is because I've seen businesses that have tied themselves off in disputes because they didn't have a proper dispute resolution clause, and there's a pandemic, so nobody's going to court. So basically, people are just, you know, losing money as their inventories and stuff are just being held up, or, you know, their cash flow is just stuck somewhere. So you want to think about the fact that as people are going more digital, there's going to be an adjustment in the way people are going to settle disputes, and you have to be creative about it. So I'm going to go over this again. As you go online right now, think through identity verification. People you're doing business with, there are some unscrupulous individuals right now everywhere. So you need to be able to make sure that you can verify the identity of people you're going to business. You also need to think about privacy and data security, which I just talked about right now. You want to think about how to protect your intellectual property, and you also want to think about dispute resolution. I know it's a lot, but it's not, at the same time, you know, now that I mention it, when you come across those issues, you'll be able to identify them immediately. So another thing to think about right now is regulatory requirements, right? So, this is my second to the last slide. Yeah. So another thing you think about is regulatory requirements. So depending on the industry where you operate, you have regulators, right? Communication with regulators is key, especially at this particular point in time. You don't want a situation whereby after the pandemic, it's like, oh, we didn't know we're supposed to do this. Make sure to check with the tax authorities that you've met all regulatory requirements. Make sure you check up compliance requirements and adjustments. What I mean by this is, for instance, in the US, the IRS had given businesses an extension of deadlines to apply to file taxes and things like that. Don't just assume that, oh, because there's a pandemic, we're not supposed to file taxes, or I'm not supposed to collect VAT, I'm not supposed to do this. No, these things still are happening. So what you need to understand is that communication with the regulator is actually key. So find out and say, okay, if we're supposed to still be collecting VAT on certain services in this country, or sales tax, like I said, depending on the country you're from or the country you're in, you need to really go to your regulators and find out exactly what's going on. Again, you don't want a situation whereby you're hit with a huge, tax bill or something right after the pandemic. So make sure that you are communicating with your regulators frequently. And then again, like I said, check up compliance requirements as well. If there are any adjustments that need to be made, make them, and just ensure that you are on the right side of the law. Now, regulatory requirements are probably things that SMEs again don't think about too much, but at the same time, as you grow, right, they become a live issue. So the earlier you kind of like understand the regulatory landscape of your industry, the better for you, because you have situations where, in some countries, SMEs are kind of like inundated with so many taxes and so many like compliance requirements. I'm not sure why that word is just jumping out of my mouth. Compliance requirements from different regulatory bodies, right? And if that's the first time you're interacting with them, you're kind of like, you don't know what's going on. I've seen businesses actually die, because it was just stifle their growth. So one of the things you need to think about is, are there any regulations I need to abide by and everything like that? Even as a service provider, right? If you're maybe you're a tax advisor, SMEs or something like that, there's probably some body that you're supposed to be registered with or something like that. So make sure that you kind of like are always one step ahead of the regulators before they come to you. So make sure you understand the regulatory requirements of the particular sector you're operating in, whatever permits or licenses you're supposed to get. If you think that this doesn't apply to you, make sure you have an argument ready for when they come knocking on your door, because they will. And I think I'll talk about my final slide now. So there's something, because now I've gone through all of this and you're like, oh my God, Mo, all those legal issues are kind of like a lot. Yes, I would agree that for someone who's not a lawyer or doesn't have a legal background, it's kind of like real tough for you to navigate all of this by yourself. So Skill also in itself actually has a product called Skill Legals, which we're launching in a couple of weeks. And what it does for you is that it gives you legal diagnostics and repair. I love that word a lot. So basically, you just fill in like a questionnaire, and then it tells you, oh, these are the legal issues in your business, and then ways to repair them, right? Totally neat. I love it so much. Then you can auto-generate legal documents as well. So let's say, even as a small-time business owner who wants to go into an agreement with an influencer or something like that, or even a photographer. There's something that people don't know. Do you know that if you get a photographer to take pictures of your products, right, the license and the copyright in that particular photograph actually belongs to the photographer? That's the international copy laws. And the reason for that is that the law just says the person who presses the camera, the shutter of the camera, is the person who has commercial rights to the pictures. So one of the things, again, is small businesses that you're not thinking about. So if the photographer can post anywhere, right? And issues where people are like, oh, my collection hasn't launched yet, and the photographer already posted. Well, if they don't assign the rights in that photograph to you, it actually belongs to them, and never with it, regardless of whether you paid them or not. So basically, the platform helps you, auto-generate legal documents. Lawyers will help you review it, and then you have access to like all-round legal advice for a subscription fee. So I'm going to stop here, right, and just check if there are any questions. Yewande, that was the end of my presentation, actually.
Oh, okay. So I want to see if we're getting any questions, or if I should move straight into what we have available on Flutterwave for small, medium businesses that want to make the switch online. If we don't have any questions, I'll just go straight into that presentation, and then and then we can address any other questions that people have, and then we can round up. Also, if you have dropped off at any point or if you're finding it difficult to follow, we are going to have a recording of this on our YouTube, and we will be sending that out via email by early next week. So I'm just going to go straight into Flutterwave's offerings right now on growing your business online. Okay, I'm hoping that everybody can see my screen. Okay. Okay, so obviously the pandemic has brought about a lot of restrictions and also a huge impact to revenue for businesses, especially small, medium businesses all over the world, basically. In the West, in Africa, businesses have been affected. Their revenues have dropped greatly. And then also we've noticed that obviously there has been an uptick in e-commerce and needing to go online. So we at Flutterwave decided that we were trying to figure out a solution for people to be able to get online without having to figure out, oh, what kind of engineering or software or developer or coding is required for me to get a website. How do I integrate payments? How do I get payments done? How do I reach out to my customers? How do I get information on my customers? All that, basically, we're trying to figure out a quick way for businesses to be able to get online, have their products on a simple e-commerce platform, and then have their customers be able to order from them and then handle the delivery as well. So that's why we created this. Is called Flutterwave Store. Flutterwave Store is basically, it's an online store for you, quote unquote. It basically allows you as a business to be able to get online, and this is what your customer sees. So this is an example. It's not actually Prince Ebano's store, but basically they are able to see your product offerings or what you have available. They just click the plus and then they are able to add it to their cart, and then they're able to check out. Delivery is also done with our delivery partners. In countries like Kenya, we are working with Sendy, and in Nigeria, we're working with Sendbox to basically integrate delivery and have them pick up from the business and then deliver to the customer. Obviously, all that information is available for the customer to see when they're shopping. So transparency is really important. So the customer's order is collated, and then their address, their phone number, delivery address, city, state, blah, blah, blah. All of that information is available to you, and then also is handled by our delivery partners. Here's what the order summary looks like. Also, another thing that I should mention is that we have different payment methods available. I know that in Africa, and even in Nigeria, and in certain countries, people have different preferred means of payments. Some people prefer USSD, which is like the bank code *737 or *901. Some people prefer card payments, and some people prefer bank transfer payments. All those are available. It's something that you can turn on very easily from your Flutterwave dashboard. If you don't want to receive certain payments as well, you don't have to. You don't have to receive certain payment methods. It's something that is easily done from the Flutterwave dashboard backend. So this is what it looks like when your customer has finally completed their order and they've been able to make payments. So you get notified, the three parties get notified via email. You as a business gets notified, your customer gets notified about the fact that their order has gone through, and here's the receipt and evidence of payment. And then also our delivery partners get notified as well to pick up from you to go and deliver to your customer. And then another thing is that one thing that we've noticed is when businesses were affected by the pandemic, there was a huge need to be able to communicate with your customers, right? You need to let your customers know, oh, this city is on lockdown and we're based in this city. So we're closed right now, but we're operating an online schedule. Or if you own a restaurant and you want to let people know you're only doing pickup and delivery, you're not doing sit down, you're not allowing people to come in and sit down and have meals. How do you reach out to your customers? How do you inform them beyond your social media, which we know obviously probably depends on the social media algorithm? Where is your customer information? Maybe you don't have that anywhere. Flutterwave dashboard allows you to get your customer information, which means that you can also reach out to your customers, via email and stuff, and phone, to inform them of any updates that you have to their order for Flutterwave store, or even for marketing purposes as well. Another thing I want to go over really quickly is actually payment links, and it's our payment links option. Payment links really works great for people who want to do maybe a one-time payment or a repeated, consistent payment that is the same price or has a modified price. Basically, what it is it pretty much is just one single, you go on your Flutterwave dashboard, you create your link, you go on payment links, you create your link, and then you're able to send that link to your customer or able to send it to whoever, your client as well. And they're able to make payments to you that comes to your Flutterwave dashboard. The good thing about this is that if you don't have a website, if you don't have a website, you don't want to go through the hassle of setting up a website. You want to be able to make payments and just receive your payments without having too much hassle. The whole idea behind payment links, our invoicing solution, and also Flutterwave store is that businesses want to be able to get online or receive payments, businesses, freelancers, individuals, without having to do any coding or any complicated work. And so we put in the effort to be able to ensure that this is something that is available to you right now. To get on Flutterwave store, all you need to do is just go on flutterwave.com and then sign up to have a Flutterwave account, and then you can create your Flutterwave store. It's completely free. In terms of pricing, what we do is we charge per transaction. We charge a transaction charge. If you are based in Nigeria, the cost for that transaction charge is 1.4% for local transactions, but it's capped at 2,000 Naira. But also, if your transaction charge is more than 2,000 Naira, we won't charge you more than 2,000 Naira, basically. Let's see. Right. I think that's pretty much it. I tried to get through it as quickly as possible so that we can keep to time. And I am also happy to answer any questions that anyone has on this.
Hi, I was muted.
Yes, okay. So I don't think
Awesome, that seems like a pretty neat solution. I think that was the first time I was actually seeing the demo. It looks pretty cool.
Really? I think actually I have a video that I can play. 1 second, I'm going to play the video and then we can round up. But please feel free to send questions, guys, if you have any. I'm just going to play the video now.
Hi guys, my name is Ted, and I'm a product designer at Flutterwave. I want to walk you through what we've been building for the past couple of days. Welcome to my dashboard. I'm going to walk us through 2 processes. The first process is how to set up a store and add products to the store. The second process will be how your customers will pay you and use your store. So I'm going to click on the store. By default, you have no products or store. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my own store now. My business name is my store name by default. I'm going to go and change mine to something else. I'm going to go with drinks and let's see, fun. You'll notice that I updated my store URL to reflect my store name. I am going to leave my store offline because I want to add products to my store before I take it live. I have successfully created my store. I now have my store name and my store URL. My URL is what I'm going to share with my customers for them to be able to make payments. You can only have one store on your Flutterwave account. I'm going to go ahead and add just one product. It's good to know that you can have more than one product. I'm going to go ahead and call this Tiger Nut Milk. Tiger Nut Milk goes for about 1,000 Naira right now. Milk that's made from Tiger Knot. I'm just going to go with 0.38, and I have 10 items in stock. Next step is to take my store online. Now my store is online. I am going to proceed to the customer page, which is basically your storefront. As you can see here, Drinks and Fun is the name of my store. Flutterwave store demo is the name of my account. We have here the description of my store. As you can see, Tiger Nut milk. I'm going to go ahead and add 2 bottles of Tiger Nut milk. Click on pay. I'm going to go ahead and refill this. Now we have a lot of payment options. You can give your customers a lot of payment options.
Yes, that's the main gist of what Flutterwave Store does and what it looks like from the customer end and also from the back end as well. I think that we've kind of officially come to the end of this webinar. Like I said, we are going to be having this, we're going to upload this and have it available on YouTube, just a recording of this webinar. And we'll be sending that via email to everyone that registered. So if you have missed it or dropped out at any point, that information will be available to you within the next week. Haimo, do you have anything that you want to say or share?
No, I think it's fine. It's a good thing that the recording is going to be available. Please do send it to me as well.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for joining us and have a wonderful day. And good luck and stay safe.